Hi, good morning. Good doctor. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Dad?
I'm good. Listen, first of all, I want to thank you for spending some of your time with your old man. I know you're busy, you got a lot of stuff going on. But man, there's been a lot of discussion about my hometown, GI, Gary,
Yes.
Indiana, as it relates to this recent blackout. Whatever. I'm gonna just say what we call it, and I'm having you on
Sure.
because I've gotten a lot of comments from people related to a little post I did, and the comments are wild. The comments are from one end of, hey man, sounds like a really great idea. Let's do something to help the city. To, hey man, you just a racist and you race baiting. Yeah, exactly. It like Democrats come out and I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't say nothing about political identifications. You know who your father is. You know I don't care nothing about red or blue, donkey or an elephant. Like that's not what I was talking about. So I thought instead of wasting time and energy responding to comments that are not going to move us forward, they're not solution oriented. I thought maybe the best way to start was to start by talking to an actual subject matter expert because there are too few subject matter experts, including me. I'm not a subject matter expert. I know a little. I believe I know more than most because I have the privilege of being the father of a guy who holds a PhD in electrical and computer engineering. But I'm going to stop pontificating now. And then I'm just going to ask you a series of questions so that first of all, people can get to know who you are as a subject matter expert. And then we can talk about, I knew you were going to do that. And we could, right? And then we can talk a little bit about some of the stuff going on at the very basic level so that people can have a much more informed dialogue instead of listening to people like me, who people would maybe
hmm
accuse of not understanding infrastructure and those kind of things, which I do, but to hear from the subject matter expert instead. So let's start with this. Who are you?
I am Dr. Naeem Turner-Bandele. As you said, I hold a PhD in electrical and computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon University, where my focus was power systems or looking at our electric grids. I also have an MBA from New York University's Stern School of Business, and I now run my own energy technology company called Latimer Enterprises, where I focus on everything from the grid to our building systems to educating our youth on energy.
So if we were to compare you to the multitude of talking heads that we hear talking about what's currently going on, seriously, how would you say they compare to your knowledge of this subject from, I don't know, 0 to 10? 10 being they know exactly what you know or more, and zero being they need to shut the hell up. And I said that, not you.
Exactly. You said that, not me. I would give them a three or a four because on the one hand, they are receiving, they are supposed to be receiving updates from the entities at hand here, in this case, NIPSCO, on what's happening with the outage in a way that I don't have that level of granular detail. But on the other hand, they don't have the subject matter expertise to understand what's happening or even to ask the right questions. And there's just a lot of talk.
Okay, so speaking of that, then
And three or four, I should say, is at best. That does not apply universally to everyone in the
okay, all right.
discussion.
So some of them are zero,
They
right?
might be,
And the
yes.
best case 3 or 4. All right, cool. I got you. So with that in mind, can you tell us, uh, like in summary, in the level that unsophisticated people can understand what took place in Gary from an energy expert's understanding?
Okay, well, there was a storm. We are all aware that there was a storm, and that storm knocked down several power lines. And the knocking down of those power lines resulted in outages across the area in both Gary and other places within the territory that NIPSCO is responsible for.
Should the so is this an issue of infrastructure when you say that knock down the power lines? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, with At its most basic, this is an infrastructure issue, but it's not an infrastructure issue in the way people might traditionally think. It comes down to very basic vegetation management. What that means is that there are trees that surround the power lines. There are other forms of plants that surround the power lines, and they are supposed to be pruned, and there's supposed to be a certain level of clearance. Each utility is responsible for establishing its own level of clearance or what the distance should be between the trees, the vegetation, and the power lines. That's their responsibility to determine. There are certain standards that are established as a baseline by different industry bodies. But yeah, each utility is responsible for that. And so if it is not properly cleared or maintained, then you do get massive outages like the one we've seen in Northwest Indiana in Gary. So it is very clearly an issue from that standpoint. Now, NIPSCO is inevitably going to dispute this. They are already disputing that. And the state has or will be launching an investigation through the Utility Commission. And so we'll see if they're right. But I mean, I think if you just look at the images out of Gary, it's very clear that there are some distribution lines, power lines that there's no way in the world they could satisfy a proper standard of vegetation management. So it's an infrastructure issue in that way, in that we just have not, or they have not done their duty to maintain the lines as they should.
Okay, so I want to address the issue of race really quickly.
Sure.
Do you think this has anything to do with the color of one's skin, or do you imagine that this? Did you say deforestation? Is that what it's called?
Vegetation
Deforestation?
management.
Vegetation management. See, that's what I'm saying. Somebody else said deforestation. And I'm okay. Vegetation management. Do you think that's common, or do you think that that's specific to Gary and quote unquote black folks?
No, this is a common problem because we saw just a few years ago, if you remember, PG&E was in quite a bit of trouble with the multitude of incidents that they had in California, with the Camp Fire being one, and then there was another major set of fires in other parts of the state as well. So with other utilities, so no, vegetation management issues are pretty common throughout the industry. And it's still a huge issue despite the many standards we have in place, despite the practices that are required to be enforced. Yeah, it's a problem regardless of where you live.
You before I move on, you said PG&E. So for those of us who don't understand the
Yeah,
acronym.
that's Pacific Gas and Electric out of the Bay Area in
Okay.
California.
Okay, so the fires that were there are could be, I won't say that, maybe contributed in some way to the.
Yeah. So the lack of vegetation management contributed to, yes, the spread, yeah, of
Okay,
that fire. That was part of the investigation of the campfire,
okay,
is what it was called in
okay.
2019.
All right, thank you. So what about the discussion around data centers and that's part of the reason for the blackout? Because that's the
That
other thing I've heard right that we've got data centers and data centers like this is affecting the grid. So can you talk a
th-
little bit about what that?
There,
Yeah.
I believe there are data centers in construction in Northwest Indiana, but I'm not aware of an AI data center because that's what we're talking about here. A hyperscale data center that consumes the amount of power much power as some cities or multiple cities or some nations or states. Yes, those could affect it, but that's not what we're talking about here. That's not an issue in the case of this outage. It again, an investigation is going to be done, but it seems very clearly that vegetation management certainly played a role here in the actual outage itself. Now, in the restoration and the bringing power back up for people, that's a whole nother investigation that's needed to, or maybe be part of all rolled up into one. But I think it is concerning that it has taken 2 weeks we're going to be soon over 2 weeks with still, I believe as of yesterday, over 10,000 residents without power. So that requires its own investigation on whether the appropriate manpower was there, what were the staffing plans on for NIPSCO, all sorts of things. But the data center piece, no, data centers are not related to this particular outage.
Should there be some concern in the future about the growth of data centers and the ability for places like Gary to get I don't know, just to get energy or electricity transmitted safely, securely, independently, affordably, to borrow from the acronym for Latimer Enterprises?
I definitely think there could be concern. Yeah, absolutely. Because we don't in I would say in Indiana still as well, we don't have a clear pathway forward on how these data centers will pay for the infrastructure that they're going to require. So yes, you could see larger bills directly attributable to data centers. Just to date in Indiana, I would say it's still tough to see that evidence, just because we don't have that large presence of data centers. The flip side of it is the presence of the data centers could, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because this is sad that it takes this, could unfortunately result in utilities like NIPSCO actually deciding to make the infrastructure investments that they need to make in order to ensure that these data centers have the power that they require, because they essentially cannot go offline for any significant period of time. Otherwise, it completely ruins whatever they're trying to run or to do. So there's that. There's both sides of the potential. There's potential for it to raise costs for everyday people. There's potential for yes, for it to be a drain on the system, but there's also the potential that we have to acknowledge for it to be added benefit if it means that the things that need upgrading and have needed upgrading for decades now actually get handled.
Okay, so you said something about hyperscale, and I don't know that like that's one of those terms you use, and I'm like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
You're right. You're
Right,
right.
I've been
You're
around
right.
you,
You're
so I
right.
kind of
You're
know it a
right.
little
You're right.
bit.
You're
But
right.
can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, so we've had data centers for a very long time in the United States.
Okay,
So,
stop
like,
for a second, please. Stop.
yeah,
Say that again for the people in the cheap seats who
we've had
think that they're experts and don't know what they're talking. We've had what now?
we have had data centers for a long time in the United States. Data centers are partly responsible for how you and I are talking right now over a Zoom call. They
Exactly.
provide cloud services. They're how you can communicate over Facebook and all your social media platforms, etc. Data centers have existed. They've been a part of the US for a long time now.
Okay, time out. Time out.
Yes.
I need to call time out. Okay, cool. So that this is going to be me saying this. So there is a certain level of hypocrisy when we say we don't want data centers because we love being able to share our cat videos and talk about who's dating who through various forms of media. We love being able to turn on our televisions and watch whatever subscription service we want to watch. So data is a part of that, correct?
Yeah, data centers are a part of that, yes.
Okay, cool. Now, okay, game back on. All right, you go.
Okay, now there are several types of data centers. Hyperscale data centers are the massive facilities operated by major technology companies and established data center providers. They can deliver the cloud services that we're used to. They can deliver web hosting, so host websites, but now also AI services. And it's this additional share of AI services. So your interactions with ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever, choose your favorite one, that need this additional level of support, and growing them to deliver these new services is a part of a hyperscale data center's job. So if you think about it this way, since most households first received electric lighting 100 years ago, we've seen technological innovations that bring into our homes more electricity consumption, from refrigerators to microwaves to televisions to computers. Over time, those things made those innovations have become more efficient over time, but we've also started to use them more, increasing our electricity consumption. You can think about the AI services that are in hyperscale data centers in a similar way. They're just becoming more prevalent, more dominant in data centers and occupying them more. And they consume, and because we're using them more and they already had a baseline electricity use that was pretty high, their footprint is pretty massive. So some stats that we know thus far are that a single hyperscale AI focused data center can consume as much electricity as 100,000 households annually. So that's the difference that we're
So
talking
so
about.
so that's five Garys. Gary
Yeah.
has a roughly 21,000 households. You're telling me that the
Yeah.
energy of a data center will have more energy, uses the same energy as five Gary, Indianas.
Yes, yes, those are some of the numbers we know today. And on top of that, some of the ones in construction today could consume as much electricity as 2 million households annually.
So how do we exist with the hyperscale data centers without having more blackouts? And so let me ask you this. So put a pin in that, which is then to say we keep talking about the use of AI. Everybody wants to talk about the use of AI. Everybody using an LLM, and at the same time, then everybody's complaining about. So again, there feels like there's a little bit of hypocrisy and maybe a failure to understand. Can we keep going the way we go, doing all the things we want to do, and then you know what I'm saying? Like, can you have your cake and eat it too? It feels like that's a little bit what we're
No.
saying with AI and all the things we want to do with AI. AI in schools, AI at work, AI in your videos. Everybody wants to use AI for everything, and then we have the issues with the power. So how do we do that? How do we have our cake and eat it too?
I mean, you can't have your cake and you can't come simultaneously, I guess, complain about an AI data center and then also be using Chat GPT, etc., to do work or ask silly questions, what generate images, because that's contributing to the need for these data centers. That says to the companies in question that there is demand and that it justifies the need for them to build these additional facilities. So no, you can't have both at the same time. Can we meet the demand of AI data centers? Sure, we absolutely can figure out a way to do that. But it requires a lot of strategic thinking. It requires new infrastructure. We talked about infrastructure earlier. So it is possible to meet it, but to your point, can you simultaneously complain about having a data center in your backyard and then also be using Chat GPT? No, you
TikTok,
can't.
right? TikTok videos, your
It,
TikTok images. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, because AI has been integrated into all of your favorite social media platforms, the websites you use. So yes, it's very tough to make that argument and come away clean.
Okay. All right. So you said you talked about the grid 100 years ago, and again, a layperson, Thomas Edison, whoever is responsible, you can tell me who is responsible for the early grid. I know who's responsible for electricity, allegedly, and light bulbs, but I won't go into that. But the grid that existed originally around 1889 or somewhere along that. The lines, the poles look very much in many ways like they did 100 plus years ago. Is it tenable to continue a system that looks like it's 100 that appears the same way it did 100 years ago to count on it to be able to transfer the kind of energy for a 22nd century society?
No, I mean it's a very clearly not attainable. We've needed these infrastructure upgrades, as I've said for decades now, and it just becomes more and more evident whether you want to talk about the transmission lines themselves and the transmission and distribution lines themselves, and what and the changes needed there. If you want to talk about transformers, which are used to help support the sending and sharing of electricity so that it gets to our homes. We have transformers on our power grids today that are as old as 100 years old, if not close to older than that now, still operating on the power grid, or power grids, I should say. So no, it's not tenable to expect older infrastructure to continue to operate and serve us, especially as our needs grow. It just isn't tenable.
So I'm going to say this in again in a layperson's fashion, so we can perhaps understand it. No, because you did an excellent job. When I have a phone, we buy phones.
Yeah.
At some point, the phone manufacturer stops supporting our phones with software upgrades. Is the grid anyway like that? That the fact that you said some things we're still using that are part of the grid that are 100 years ago, like how can we it be upgraded, or do we need like we do with phones to just get rid of them and start with something new?
No, I think that there are a lot of ways to make better use of the existing grid. So are these things called grid enhancing technologies, or GETs, that are used to enable us to send more power through existing transmission lines, or to other technologies available to us might help us monitor power lines and transformers that exist right now better, so that we don't overload or overuse them. Those are all solutions in the space, but there are things absolutely like some of those nearly 100-year-old transformers that just do need to be fully replaced and swapped out for something new. And the people who are at utilities know these things. They know their infrastructure. They know the things need to be replaced. It is just this dynamic that we as a society established over how utilities are regulated and exist that makes this a particularly challenging to execute
Okay,
on.
I'm going to call you back at some point because I would really like to talk about the origin of the quote unquote natural monopolies that are utility companies.
Yes.
But I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
let's not get into that right now.
we won't address that today. I do have a couple of additional questions. About the transmission. You mentioned again, I'm going to get the name wrong. Where you cut down the trees around
Vegetation
the
management.
vegetation management. Okay, where should transmission? What could we do with transmission lines that would be better than hanging them up on poles and hoping that the trees don't grow over?
The other option is undergrounding transmission lines, so literally putting the power lines underground. Um, that comes with its own in some places its own share of challenges, but yeah, it avoids that issue of vegetation management, or that need to constantly worry about the security of those lines being obstructed by an animal, like a squirrel biting at it. Those things happen, or trees obstructing it, things like that. So undergrounding is another option.
So squirrels can bite through the transmission line?
Yeah, squirrels have been through power lines before.
Wow. Okay. All right. All right. So optimally, given the current system that we have, um, lines better served above or below ground?
I would say it depends on what part of the country you live in. Like, some parts of the country are better suited to undergrounding lines. Some parts, you should probably maintain the overhead lines, as we call them.
Which lines were better, below or below, above or below? You were explaining that. I think that's what you were doing.
I was saying it depends on where you live, and yeah, it's not universal. It depends.
So because there's been a discussion in Gary that the line should have been underground, and I'm like, is that you said it would still depend. You could not tell just.
No,
Well, I'll be
yeah,
quiet.
I
You tell
mean,
me.
I couldn't tell without having a better look at without having a better look at the Gary itself, without looking at the entirety of the infrastructure, without looking at the where the circuits are right now, etc. So yeah, I would say it's tough to say, but in general, is it a solution? Yeah, it is a solution to avoid to avoid this type of problem.
Okay. Um, Two more questions. One, do you anticipate the cost of energy for the residents of Gary and the surrounding areas also affected by the storm to go up after after this this storm, this blackout?
I guess I'd have a pose a question back to you. What is giving you the sense that they would go up?
Okay, so
Yeah, can you be more specific?
yes, well, because of the work that I do for a living, I wonder about the what is the profit motive for the utility company and those that the utility company are in bed with. So, like private equity is an example, and so private equity requires profitability. And if I have to spend money repairing stuff, that means I'm taking away money from what would be my bottom line to then pass it back to the people who have
Hmm.
invested. So the only way to not lose the profit would be to increase the cost that the consumers pay for electricity. So that's why, right, there's the part of me that is the suspicious person who says, yeah, you're probably going to see a rate increase at some point to make up because the corporations are not going to bear the brunt of the cost.
Yeah, I can't remember at this moment if NIPSCO already has a rate case being they go to the Public Utility Commission and ask for a change in their different rate categories. I can't remember right now if they have a pending rate case in front of the Public Utility Commission, but I would say that in this current political environment, it's unlikely that they'd get an approval or a significant approval, especially now given this outage and what the it now seems like an investigation that'll be started by that the governor would like to occur and that will be started. I just can't see it in the immediate future them being granted a significant increase in rates unless they're saying we're going to actually deal with all of the issues, the infrastructure issues that contributed to this. So it's tough to see the commission approving something right now under the current environment.
I know I said I got one more question, but you just gave me another question. So who is the commission? You say they have to go petition for the who's
Yeah,
that?
it's the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. It's a body that looks at and decides whether utility can increase electricity rates, or they look at a number of different utilities, not just electricity in this case in the state of Indiana. Different states operate differently, but they meet to make a determination on these types of questions, on rates, on they just did an energy affordability study in the state of Indiana, so to do those sorts of things.
How do you get on this committee?
Through appointment. It's not an elected commission. And I should say again, this is where di states differ. In some
Sure.
states, it is an elected position, but in the state of Indiana, it is not.
And who does the appointing?
The governor.
Okay. So I can just get on the
No,
you
you cannot.
well you wouldn't
It's
want
not an
you
application.
the,
No, the governor the governor selects and appoints these people. It is
I,
at his discretion.
okay, cool. Now this is the last question, I think. What do people do moving forward? And I know you know me, and you know I'm out there like the visionary. Like if we could free ourselves from our overlords that are utility companies, monopolies, what can people do now, and what could we imagine being um, the energy system in the future?
I would start with towards the future. I would say we're headed increasingly towards being a more decentralized energy system. And what I mean by that is right now, by and large, we still have these large power plants, your natural gas, your coal in the state of Indiana, your wind, your solar, whatever, pick your energy source. They then electricity is transmitted from these major power plants to smaller substations, and then from those substations, it's into the power sent to our homes, businesses, whatever you have. And when I say decentralized, I mean that we're starting to see across the country and globally systems where instead of relying on getting that electricity from this large power plant, instead you get it from, let's say, an energy source provided through your community. So community solar and battery storage, something like that, or shifting to starting to see shifts towards microgrids, which are smaller electrical grids that can depending on the definition can either connect to the main utility grid when needed or also be fully disconnected from the main utility grid. So you don't necessarily have to depend on um, your utility company to supply your electricity. The regulatory status of microgrids is still in flux across the US. So again, it depends on where you live and on what is currently allowed. But you
Mhm.
are seeing an increasing shift towards and allowing for microgrids in a number of different settings. I mean, it's increasingly common in military settings already.
Can you give us an example of what that looks like?
Of what a microgrid looks like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could tell us a place. I'll find it and put something in the notes. But like I know there's some.
Uh,
I think Tampa even has a small a microgrid community. Of course, some nations like some countries like well Norway, Oslo has a microgrid and who wonder which country is it that lives completely off renewable energies. You don't have to do that. I guess the
yeah,
point that I want people to start thinking about is that the system we have now doesn't have to be the system we have forever.
I mean, I want to say there, Colorado is a good place to look. And like I said, there are already military installations. I can't think of the names of them off the top that have already moved towards microgrids or have some in development. So yeah, if you want to look just to the US, if you want to look to other countries, yeah, some of the places you named already.
That's cool. I'll say that for the next time. 'Cause next time I
Yeah.
want to talk to you about microgrids and then talk to you a little bit more about this utility commission so I can figure out how to get on the commission.
Okay. Oh
They
dear.
they probably will never let me on the commission. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
just saying you're gonna have to become good friends with the governor, good
In
friends
other
with the governor's people.
in other words, I'm never going to be I'm never going to be
No, you're
on.
not.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, good doctor. You are the best. Hey, I spent some time with my son, but more importantly, I spent some time with Dr. Naeem K. Turner-Bandele, um, PhD in electrical and computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon, former Sully summer undergraduate laboratory intern at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, a national board member for the National Society of Black Engineers, and currently president and CEO of Latimer Enterprises. I am with a real subject matter expert, people. If you got questions, hey, let's just do this again. We just call it Ask Naeem.
Or not.
Or not. All right, brother. Love you later.
Oh, love you
Thank you.
too.
Peace.
Peace.